Hey, how's it going? Luke here. In this video I'll give my opinion on the console versus PC debate. I am a PC user and I would not buy an Xbox One or PS4 myself, but I'm not going to give the usual everyone should be on PC statement that most PC users will normally give. The PC is the most technically advanced game system available today, but being the most technically advanced system is not the same as being the system that you have the most fun on, and that is the single most important element of your gaming experience, how much fun you will have. A small number of people actually do find a great deal of fun to be had from the graphics alone, and graphics are usually the main selling point for AAA game titles. However, I believe that gamers are often led astray by eye candy, because once you start playing the game, it is the experience that the game offers regardless of eye candy that truly affects how much fun you actually have playing the game. Some games are exclusive to some systems, so you need to take that into consideration when deciding which system to get. Halo and Forza are Xbox exclusives, and The Last of Us and Gran Turismo are PlayStation exclusives, for example. The PC has many exclusives too, such as Arma, Dota 2, simulator games and many indie games catering to some more specific tastes. Anyone that is into simulator games, flying, racing, farming, whatever, you should definitely look into getting a PC for gaming. PCs offer a large amount of simulator games with many simulator peripherals available, steering wheels, flight sticks, etc. Some people love those exclusive games so much they must have the system on which their beloved game is exclusive to. In my opinion, their logic is sound. They will have more fun playing those games than any other. For most of us, the choice is not so simple, unfortunately, and many games are available on multiple platforms with varying levels of quality on each platform. One game is better on Xbox than PS4, but then some other game is the other way around. At this point you have to start to consider other aspects rather than just the games themselves. Some people will very much prefer the Xbox joypad to the PS joypad, or vice versa, and of course some people will be fine with either joypad. The mouse and keyboard gives a greater level of control and very much changes how first-person shooter games like Battlefield 4 are played. In first-person shooters, the joypad makes looking from side to side slower, and therefore players end up only looking straight ahead most of the time, and end up with a very tunnel vision approach to the gameplay, while with a mouse and keyboard you can look around a lot faster and easier. This enables players to be far more aware of their surroundings. The extra level of control offered by the keyboard and mouse also means that players using the keyboard and mouse have to spend more time learning to use and getting used to the control system. In order to be really good with a mouse and keyboard, you need to make use of muscle memory a lot more than you would do with a joypad. As a result, you will find a much wider variety of skill levels on the PC as people spend varying amounts of time training their muscle memory for mouse and keyboard. Obviously, you do not have to worry about this on the joypad, and this helps to create a more even playing field on console where everyone is using a joypad. When people start to play using mouse and keyboard for the first time, they will probably find it difficult to get to grips with the keyboard and mouse control system to start with. That could be quite frustrating during this learning phase. However, if you use a mouse and keyboard a lot anyway for Photoshop, video editing, or just use a PC a lot, then this can give a head start when starting to learn to use the mouse and keyboard. Games like Battlefield 4 have a small amount of auto-aim when playing the joypad on console. With the mouse and keyboard on PC, there is no auto-aim assist, so the speed and accuracy of the player's mouse movements are incredibly important. On console, you do not have to worry about the control system quite so much, leaving players more freedom to use knowledge and tactics rather than just pure shooting accuracy and speed of target acquisition. Using keyboard and mouse is best done at a desktop. You do not have to sit at a desktop as long as you have a large flat surface on which to put the mouse. It's fine to sit on a bed or sofa, for example. However, this is mainly when not playing online competitive games. In order to train your muscle memory for the mouse, it is best to always be sat in the same position with the mouse and keyboard in near enough the exact same position every time. If you want to be really good online, then you should really be at a desktop when using keyboard and mouse, as it is much easier to be in the exact same position each time. This of course limits people who cannot or do not want to be sat at a desktop to play games all the time. You can use a joypad on PC. The Xbox 360 pad will work on the majority of PC games with no configuration or extra drivers needed at all. This is fine for single player games and say flying in Battlefield 4, but you will be at a massive disadvantage if you try to use the joypad as infantry in a first person shooter against players using mouse and keyboard. Left-handed players will find using keyboard and mouse more difficult as well due to having to remap their keyboard to a mirror of the right-handed version, something that I've never noticed as standard in the game, default left-hand keyboard layout. You will need an ambidextrous or left-hand specific mouse as well, limiting the left-handed player even more. Many left-handed players simply learn to use the mouse with their right hand. In my opinion, left-handed players should take the time to map out the keyboard to a mirror of the right-handed version of the layout. First few times this will be a total pain in the ass, not to mention relearning the muscle memory used to find keys without looking at the keyboard, but given enough time this method should be better for left-handed players. Consoles are much more suitable for playing with friends that come over to visit. The joypads, the fact that you're probably setting up the console in front of your large HD TV sat on a sofa. A PC is more likely to be in a spare room or bedroom with an office chair, as a PC will usually, but not always, be rather large and heavy and have a mass of cables coming out of it. Of course, you do not have to have a console in your lounge, and you do not have to have a PC locked away in some hidden room with a 24-inch monitor that you have to be close to. But for most people, it would be too impractical to move a PC around your house or to play console on a monitor at a desktop. If you play online games a lot, then you should also consider the fact that if most of your friends use a particular system to play online games, then you could have more fun playing on the system that they use so that you can play with them. It would be a bad idea to underestimate the extra level of fun that playing with a group of good friends can offer. You can search for communities of players that play the games that you like and join them, of course. I've done this myself, and I have made many new friends in the process. It just takes a little longer to find a good group of like-minded players when searching for communities to join. As everyone knows, the main issue with the PC is the initial cost of buying the system. After that, it needs to be upgraded to keep playing newer games at the higher graphics settings. I do not have much money myself, and I have to make some sacrifices in order to be able to pay for my PC. But I love PC gaming, and I'm happy to make the sacrifices to keep my PC at a very high spec for gaming. Many people that play PC games do completely overspend on their systems though. On YouTube you will see many YouTuber PC gamers that have overpriced systems that are total overkill for the games that they play, although many YouTubers often run games at over 100 frames per second or have elaborate setups like triple monitors or 4K resolutions. In order to play Battlefield 4 or GTA 5 at 1080p resolution and 60 frames a second, you do not need a £1,000 or $1,000 system. It's more like £600 or $600, not including the monitor though. Maybe less if you do your research, but that performance is already beyond the capabilities of the Xbox One or PS4. If you buy a second-hand PC, then you can get it for even less than that, but you will have to spend time researching the specs of any system available in order to make sure it does what you want. The prices are relevant at the time this video is made, of course. PC component prices are changing all the time. The Xbox One and the PS4 upscale from lower resolutions, but can play some games at 60 frames a second. Yes, my PC is worth more than $1,000 or £1,000, but that is so that I can play at 100 frames a second or more while recording the gameplay at 60 frames per second. This requirement at least doubles the cost of the system. And that is the type of performance that most YouTubers are aiming for when spending loads of money on their PCs. 60 frames per second is fine for most people. You can get an advantage in some games with more than 60 frames a second, but at that point the extra money required to get over 60 frames is definitely not worth the advantage that the extra frame rate offers for most people. Many PC players, including players that are highly skilled, are happy with 60 frames a second, including some YouTuber PC game players. Some games are even capped at 60 frames a second and will not go higher anyway. For me, anything over 60 frames a second is only required in very competitive and fast-paced games such as Battlefield 4, and in single-player games I'm usually happy with 60 frames a second. In competitive games such as Battlefield 4, competitive PC players will often turn their graphics down so that they can see better and get less input lag anyway, despite the fact that they have an expensive PC. A game like BF4 may look amazing on PC, but chances are some of the best players will be turning the graphics down to get an advantage. BF4 will not look anywhere near as good for these players as it would do in adverts for the game. I do it myself on Battlefield 4 despite having an expensive system. I should mention though that BF4 on the lowest possible settings still looks better on PC than on console. With console games you pay more money for the games, a massive amount more for downloaded games, and a massive amount more for peripherals. Not to mention the Microsoft tax or Sony tax that you have to pay for online membership, a service in which they literally do nothing to earn that money. This money does not pay for servers, as most console games have no dedicated servers. In most games on console, one of the people playing will in effect be the server. Some games do have dedicated servers on console, but they will need to be paid for separately by the people that run the servers. Your Microsoft tax or Sony tax literally pays for nothing. So if you have a console, you buy lots of games and peripherals and pay your online charges, you could arguably pay more for a console than you would for a PC in the long run. And if your only concern about the PC is that it is better than an Xbox One or a PS4, then you will not need to upgrade to keep that system at a higher spec than an Xbox One or PS4 if your initial payout was around the £600 or $600 mark that I mentioned earlier. Or if you spent even more, of course. You only need to upgrade after that if you want your PC to remain high spec in PC terms, not PC versus console terms. If you do upgrade, then each upgrade pushes you further and further beyond the console alternative. Consoles do improve slightly over the years due to the game developers becoming more knowledgeable of the console software development kits, but that increases will still never match the power of a £600 or $600 PC. Some important issues regarding PCs that PC users do not usually mention include maintaining the PC software and hardware, the knowledge required not just to use the PC but to be competitive in online games, some of the issues that new games and software can cause on some setups, the fact that you get more cheaters on PC games, and the fact that there are far more players playing console games online than there are playing PC games. In my opinion, Windows is a steaming pile of shit that PC gamers have no choice but to use. There is no gamer-specific version of Windows, and Windows is self-destructive. Even if you are totally on the case with maintaining Windows, it will eventually fuck itself up. Problems with Windows will affect how well your games run and sometimes stop them from running altogether. I recommend the Windows Tweak Guide by Kairosh Ghazi, sorry if I butchered that name, link is in the description. I recommend that to anyone that uses a Windows PC, whether they are a gamer or not. To give you an idea of the amount of information required for a Windows guide, the document is over 400 pages of A4 of text with no pictures, and there is a guide for each version of Windows, and Windows 10 will almost certainly require another guide as well. Now, this information is not essential to use Windows, but I definitely recommend it to Windows users, or at least someone that will aid you in maintaining your Windows PC. There are so many little things that you need to do to the Windows settings to get the most from your PC, and when you are spending that kind of money, you definitely want the hardware to be performing at its best possible level. It is very common for people to run into problems with PC hardware, not just when building a new PC, but also when components fail. When you first build a PC system, you'll need to make sure that the parts are compatible. I'm not just talking about making sure that you get the right CPU for the socket of your motherboard, etc., but also how parts that are supposed to be compatible may still have issues with your particular setup. One example of this is with my current system. My CPU and motherboard do work together if the motherboard has the required BIOS update. If it does not, then the CPU will not work at all, the PC will not boot up at all, and you need an older CPU of the same socket type in order to boot the PC and update the BIOS first. The average person will not have access to the other CPU that they require, and the motherboard having the latest BIOS is a total gamble. It will depend on when the shop that you purchase the parts from obtain the parts that you purchase. If the motherboard has been on the shelf for a while, then it will probably not have the BIOS update. That is one example of literally hundreds of different potential problems. I do not recommend purchasing any cutting-edge components such as the very latest and most powerful graphics cards or CPUs, as these are the components that will suffer from this kind of problem the most. Not to mention the price of such components will be artificially high while that component is still beating all other available components in benchmark scores. Problems are not just limited to the latest hardware, but also some software as well. In GTA 5 on PC, I had an issue where the self radio would cause frame rate issues and graphical anomalies for the first few weeks until it was patched by the developers. The problem is due to the software having to work on such a wide variety of hardware and the fact that Windows is shit. That is a problem that would not usually occur on a console. Because of the hardware and software compatibility issues on a PC, you also find that sometimes you cannot simply turn the system on and start playing, as there will be updates for software and hardware that need to be done first, as well as having to reconfigure things like control or graphics settings after an update. This is something that you see more and more on console nowadays as well, but it's still not as bad as it is on PC. Generally speaking, you will have to spend considerably more time doing maintenance work on a PC than you would a console, time that could otherwise be spent actually playing the games. As I mentioned earlier, PCs will require you to spend more time doing research and training in order to be competitive at the highest levels when compared to console. You do get more cheaters in PC games, but you still get cheaters on console as well. On console, players need a chipped system or a cheat controller, whereas on PC, people can alter game files to cheat. This means that it is easier to cheat on a PC, however when playing BF4 on PC, and I have played a lot, I've only ever seen 2 or 3 definite cheaters, but you do get a culture of paranoia over cheating in PC games, with lots of people falsely accusing other players of cheating. Many AAA title games are performance limited on PC as well, in order to make it easier for the game developers to port games from console to PCs. Almost certainly, BF4 is one victim of this, and indeed all games that are made on the Frostbite 2 engine. The main issue being the netcode that has been a hot topic of conversation about BF4. The PC can handle many simultaneous players on very large maps with very high server tick rates, but consoles cannot due to limitations in the technology that are present in order to keep the cost down. The server tick rate is how often each player's data is updated on the server. You will often see tick rates of 128 updates per second and more on PC, and much lower on console, usually more like 30. BF4 has gameplay anomalies where everything can seem unresponsive or things happen a small amount of time after they should, such as seeming to be shot after you have just dived behind cover. This is probably due to the BF4 developers using programming techniques such as interpolation, which will guess what is supposed to be happening in the game rather than actually waiting for the server updates, as the updates are too slow for the pace of the game. The low server tick rates and the programming techniques to compensate are also present in the PC version. This is probably done to make it easier to port Frostbite 2 engines from console to PC. If the game is made specifically for the PC, then these alternative programming techniques would not be necessary, as the hardware could handle the work without the need for software alternatives. This is something that PC players will encounter more and more in the future. On PC you get access to alpha games. Alpha games can be a good thing and a not so good thing. Alpha games are games that are sold before being completed in order to obtain further funding. It is good that players can assist in the funding, as the most innovative and interesting game concepts come from alpha games. This is due to large distribution companies such as EA not wanting to risk money on untested game types, instead opting to remake the same game every year, instead of funding development of games with new ideas. The problem with alpha access is that alpha games are not usually that much fun until they get closer to the final intended product. Also, the games will have more cheaters due to unfinished security, and they will run like shit on even the most expensive systems as they have not been optimized. Optimization is one of the last aspects of game development lifecycle, as most other aspects need to be in place before a game can be optimized as a whole. PCs do have more uses than just playing games, of course. If you need a powerful computer for video editing, Photoshop, or sound production, for example, then a PC game system can do all this as well as play games. Unless you specifically need a Mac, of course. Also, PCs can do all the usual office stuff, web browsing, word processing, spreadsheets, databases, etc., but this does not require anywhere near as much spec as playing a modern game. It does mean that you could put the money that you would otherwise spend on a laptop or whatever you would do your normal office work on towards your gaming rig, as it could do that also. PCs also have a very good backwards compatibility, with many older games still able to run fine on newer versions of Windows. On PC you also have Steam. Steam is a download-only game store that has a huge library and regular sales. Sometimes you will see as much as 75% off on a Steam sale. Of course, you do not get physical copies of games you purchased, as it's download only. This is not so good for people that like to collect physical copies of games, and if Steam ever stops its service, then who knows what will happen to your games library. Although I would trust a company such as Steam to provide some alternative rather than just leaving its customers in the dark. That is something I would never trust Microsoft, Sony, or companies such as EA to ever do. Download-only services on Xbox and PlayStation offer very little discount compared to purchasing physical copies of the game, despite the fact that the service in which you download games will have very little overhead cost compared to selling physical copies of the games. In some cases, the downloadable games on Xbox and PlayStation will cost more than a physical copy. This is nothing more than a rip-off. PCs have a higher number of peripherals for gaming as well as general use peripherals, monitors and TVs of up to 4K, triple screen options, VR headsets, etc. PCs also have moddable games. Modding has massively increased the lifespan of some games, Skyrim, DayZ mod for armor, tracks and cars for racing simulators, etc. Often some of the best mod content leads to further employment in the games industry for people that make mods due to the fact that their work is sometimes as good as the work that has been done by professional developers. Lots of mod content is also completely free. So, in conclusion, what I suggest is that you look at all of the factors that are important to you and try to decide what is best for you personally. The solution will not be the same for everyone. Hopefully I've brought up a few points you may not have been aware of, as people often give biased information and leave out important facts with the PC versus console debate. Learn as much as you can be asked to about your options and go from there. Well, thanks for watching. I hope the information in this video is useful. See you next time. Take it easy.